Welcome to California Now, a podcast produced by Visit California. I'm Satirius Johnson. On this episode, Kevin Costner, the Oscar-winning director and bona fide movie star, is here to talk road tripping both in film and in life.
I've never been able to get the Sierras out of my psyche. When I go there, I'm always refreshed. When I go to the Sequoias, it's the same. There's something about how dominant nature is, and California is completely fraught with that.
He'll also tell us about his role as co-founder of HearHere, an app that could make your next road trip feel more like a guided tour. Plus, he'll kick off our new occasional segment, the California Questionnaire. That's all coming up on California Now. Road tripping has many fans in California, among them Kevin Costner, the Oscar-winning director and star of such movies as Bull Durham and JFK. The open road is a key component in his life and many of his films. He's also co-founder of HearHere, an app that aims to make your drive feel more like a guided tour, providing interesting facts and history about your surroundings. Welcome to California Now, Kevin.
Well, thank you.
So, we're going to go deep on your road trip app, Kevin, but first, let's talk road trips generally. As a Southern California native, just how big a part were they of your upbringing?
Well, we were we didn't have a lot of money, my family. My ancestors, if you will, came out of the Dust Bowl from Oklahoma, came to California. That wasn't an easy road for them. And how they integrated into California, Okies at that point were it was not an easy thing that was happening back there in the Depression days. And you really had a lot of hard-knuckled people, that grew up. My father grew up in that, saw his family lose everything. We never really had a lot. The only thing that was open to us was the car. And our earliest trips, in fact, I don't think I was in a plane or a limousine till I was in my late 20s. So our trips were to the high Sierras, which marked me forever. And our trips were driving by motels that said heated pool, which they were never heated. They were always like ugly, and they were always like, for some reason, right out by the highway. Do you remember that? Where chain link fences, heated pool. And I kept thinking that is the world just one big liar? So our trips were in the car. They were me and my brother in the back seat, my dad pushing the sleeping bags down into where your feet would normally go. And you had one big giant bed back there. So that's how we saw California. That's how we saw the other side of the Sierras, the Sequoias. That is all we knew, driving out to the Colorado River, driving up to Lake Shasta.
Do you have any favorite California destinations?
Well, I've never been able to get the Sierras out of my psyche. When I go there, I'm always refreshed. When I go to the Sequoias, it's the same. There's something about how dominant nature is, and California is completely fraught with that. It's just, even the Colorado River, if you think about it, as part of California, and this incredible river that comes from Colorado, winds its way through the middle of the country and empties out into the Pacific. It's just carved that Grand Canyon. So, destinations, it still is the Sierras for me. And in fact, I've never been able to duplicate that particular smell that comes from the Sierras, these granite mountains with, I imagine the reason it smells the way it does is because the pine needles fall, the sun hits them, and all that sap and that just kind of wind picks up that waft, if you will. But it was all California Sierras.
Do you have any vivid memories of cars you rode in on your family road trips?
Yeah, it was a Buick, and there was no air conditioning, and and it was the white wall tires, and that's how we rolled. But then again, as I got into my years, 17, 18, I would leave in the summer. And actually, the summer I graduated, I traveled to all four corners of the United States. But my first half of my trip, I couldn't hardly get out of California. I wanted so desperately to see the rest of the country, but California just kept calling out to me. There were so many places I hadn't seen. So it took me about 9 days just to get out of California because I wanted to see so much. Then I eventually, started to roll. But California is, it's hard not to look at.
Right. No, it's so true. There's so much to do and there's so many places to go. And it is actually a perfect place for road trips. I've seen some pictures of you with some very cool cars nowadays. What do you like to drive these days and where to?
Probably one of the cars you're talking about is that 68 Cobra Mustang.
Uh-huh.
And, that's kind of the quintessential California car, if you ask me. Some people will say it was the VW van. But for me, if you broke it down, it was a Mustang convertible. And that particular car was the same car that Crash Davis drove in Bull Durham. So I bought that car. So I have it to this day. But I do have a four-wheeling Toyota that takes me into the mountains. So, I like to go. I like to put a canoe on the top. And I just kind of somehow missed Lewis and Clark's expedition. I don't know why they didn't call me, but I would have been on that one had I known.
It sounds like for you, like a road trip is just as much about the journey as it is the actual destination.
Well, I think at the end of the day, we all end up coming to that conclusion. I mean, kids, there's a moment in time when they get to be, 13, 14, 15. Sometimes they don't want to go with you anymore. And I found that a little bit with my own parents. But inevitably, once we got on the road, I was glad that I went. There's those moments you'll never forget. When you thought, well, I could spend the summer hanging out with my friends, and you're 15 and 16. And then your parents go, nope, you're with us. You're going with us. And you go, fine. And there's this little moping moment in the back seat. And the next thing you know, you're kind of staring out the window. That's probably the biggest difference between traveling nowadays versus then. And the problem with that is your kids got their noses stuck into their computers. They're not looking out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And HearHere became one of those moments that made me think, wait a second, we can all kind of experience the same dream, if you will. Bertolucci, the great Italian director, said 600 people can sit in the dark and dream the same dream. And I got to thinking when I was approached by HearHere that I made life miserable for my children by stopping at all the bronze plaques that, oh, there's another historical marker. Dad, please, not another one. Please, Dad, stop. Don't stop. No, don't stop. And I go, nope, I'm going to look at it. And I'm sure my kids with their chins in their fists looking out the window as I stand over some bronze plaque in the middle of nowhere. I was thrilled with that paragraph. And I would look around and I said, some real human drama happened here. And then the next plaque and the next plaque.
Right.
Basically, HearHere, when it came to me, was the idea that wherever I was driving through, I could somehow tie into that. And that same plaque could go from being a paragraph to being a 4 or 5 minute story or an overview of an entire area. And that alone got my interest in that kind of road dog thing in me, stopping at markers. Suddenly, when this idea came to me from Woody Sears, said, what do you think? I thought to myself, I don't know anything about the computer that kids put their nose into, but I know if I push the right button, if somebody does that for me,
mm-hmm.
I can be transported and I can walk away from where I've traveled more knowledgeable, maybe thrilled.
Well, I think, the HearHere app is actually a perfect match for you then, because, you do love to stop at those bronze plaques. You really love to know what the history is of the places you're traveling through. And I have to say, I played around with the app some and it's really cool. People can kind of have it on their phone, and as they're driving through a certain area, like if there's an interesting spot nearby, it'll pop up on the app and you can listen to like maybe a 2 or 3 minute history or explanation of the place. It's a really amazing use of the technology. It seems that like the app is adding new content much faster than I can fit in road trips this summer.
Listen, we're a startup business that has a big future. We're a startup business that has the whole horizon in front of us, and I want to fill it up. And for me, my participation in this had to do with what you'd call first contact. I, I'm in love with the history of America, the expansion of it, and the violence and the ugliness that came with that, the resourcefulness that people had to have in order to carve out a life. And so the history of America is our fingerprints are on a lot of things, and sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And I love all of it, every bit of it. And so when I got involved with HearHere, I said, we have to deal with Native Americans, and we have to deal with them not out of generosity, but out of being authentic, of understanding what was before us. Listen, not everybody's in love with history like I am. I get that. And so HearHere, thank God, is about a lot more than that. But if people want to dig down, that's what I wanted for HearHere. And we're going to have to expand from the 3-minute story because I make 3-hour movies. And stories take more time sometimes. And I know my partners believe that. And so we're a growing business, and this is going to evolve our stories. Historically, we start with overviews. We have to get, deeper and deeper and deeper to the personal stories that can haunt us, thrill us, inform us.
Your rap really goes beyond the surface and helps travelers understand where they are and what was there before. And I love it just because I am a big history buff, and I want to know if something really cool happened someplace, or if this was the spot that someone was standing on when something amazing happened.
That's right. I don't think we're alone, and that's when something has real application.
So how did you meet HearHere CEO Woody Sears and get involved in the project?
Well, this little girl in preschool liked my son, and it turns out my son in preschool liked her too. And out of that, we met their parents, and my wife continued to have kind of a arm's distant relationship with, it turns out, Woody's wife. So interestingly enough, that's how our families met. But we went on about our way as kids went to different schools. Over the course of time, though, my wife Christine, came back to me and said, "Hey, Woody's up to something, and he wanted to know if you would be interested enough to look at it." And I said, "Of course." And that was the beginning of HearHere for me, which was reconnecting with Woody, and we talked about it. And Woody is very gifted in both the business and in what the product wants to be. I was completely absorbed in the potential of what stories could be. So I didn't really go so much to the business, if you will, as much as I went towards what I considered the opportunity of maybe being able to preserve stories that have before they were lost about our history.
Mm. I mean, you are a storyteller in the end, right? And so this is just a different avenue in a way.
I think if you boil me down, most people would think that adventurer storyteller. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure you get pitched a lot of business ideas all the time. So what made you actually say yes to this one?
Well, I think Woody just had that business acumen and kind of a quality, a quietness, somebody who wasn't selling, who said, if the idea doesn't sell itself, I can't sell it. And that doesn't mean he's a hell on wheels salesman. There's a quietness about him that I could probably take a road trip with. And I had a lot of confidence in his background and what he wanted to do. Like in anything, you step off the cliff with somebody. When you want to go into business, a lot of times you're leaving something secure behind you to create another business. You don't know if it's going to work. You kind of look at the person you want to get on the road with. In this instance, financially in a business, you kind of size up the person that you're willing to go ahead and try to finance a dream. And so, there they're kind of emotional boxes that you have to check before you go into business with someone. And kind of Woody fit all those boxes for me. And I thought to myself, I can't live a life constantly trying to make my pile get bigger. I'm kind of interested in the thing I don't know. I'm kind of interested in things like, what if it did work? Wouldn't that be great? What if we could start to curate the stories of America and they could be available to people? So the what if part of going into business started to really roll for me, started to excite me. What if we could do what he's talking about? What if I could myself, even loving history and knowing that I only know a little bit about it, what if I could just keep hitting this button like it was a piece of candy? And I got in that car, and instead of candy, I was feeding myself history. I was feeding myself these stories that I'd never heard. What if we could do that?
Mm.
And those were the questions I had to answer for myself. Those I had to kind of roll around in my business model, which was, are there other people like me? And the answer certainly is yes.
Right, right. You know, I'd like to play a snippet now so folks can get a sense of how it sounds.
Welcome to one of the most picturesque regions in our country, a coastline that stretches over 250 miles and includes current-day Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo counties. The region's landscape and climate are a result of massive geological shifts that compress the mountains in many cases right up to the sea. Any comparisons in the world would most likely be to the Mediterranean, as it's often been referred to as the American Riviera. HearHere does many things, but our goal remains simple: to draw you in and offer up the history of the region unknown or forgotten. Our commitment to that idea, and specifically to the first people to inhabit this land, is a responsibility we not only feel, but always pledge to start with. So whether this is your first time or you've traveled these roads all your life, we invite you to explore your connected past.
Well, you know, that clip, that is so cool. I mean, it's like having a really knowledgeable movie star riding shotgun next to you. Did you learn anything new about California as you were recording these?
Well, you always learn something as you're digging. I mean, we can talk about, the missions of Father Sarah as missions, but they're really forts. They were really forts, and they came into vogue because Spain, while they were ignoring California, they didn't find the obvious gold that they were looking for. They were kind of an absentee owner or landlord, if you will. And only time that they got really interested in it was when they heard that the Russians were coming down the coast to be fur traders. Well, suddenly the Spaniards got a little bit out of joint and went to, match force with force, if you will, to kind of set claim to California and said, don't come any farther. This is ours. So in the fourth grade, you learn about the missions and you learn about something. But if you really understand the motivation of why we're there, everything takes on a different complexion.
Now, I know that you do a lot of the narration for a lot of the topics, but I hear there are some other top flight narration from the likes of John Lithgow, people like Phil Jackson. Is that right?
Listen, those people that you're talking about, they're vested too. We all feel the same. We have this desire, at least if you have, I think, an intellectual curiosity, to know what came before. It's almost respectful to know.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, I kind of feel like road trips are kind of like movies in a way, in that they can feel very visual, almost cinematic. They have like a beginning, middle, and end. So having movie stars along for the ride, it's kind of perfect.
Well, when you go across the country now, it's kind of a meal in a movie. And you go from LA to New York. But there was a moment in time when you said goodbye on the East Coast. It was goodbye. You knew you were not ever going back. So, the idea of what happened, the idea of road tripping, HearHere presents an alternative to wonderful music, presents an alternative to having your children have their nose in their computers. It presents an opportunity for yourself because, if we really want to, face facts, all I know is what I know at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I'm going to learn anything is if I open the door to new music, to new books, to perhaps history that can be brought to me. I'm not going to, I have no way advancing myself unless I listen to other things.
So you've made a number of road trip movies over the years, like The Highwayman and Perfect World. What is it about getting behind the wheel that works so well on film?
Well, there's another really pretty good one called Fandango.
Right.
What works about it? Well, number one, let's be honest about it. You actually start hating the people you're with on a road trip at a certain point. I mean, I've had some of the biggest fights, when you're on the road with guys you even love after about, 20 days, all your idiosyncrasies kick in. But then there's something you kick out of that moment. But look, you take yourself out of your environment. You're never going to forget those moments. Your children will never forget them. And I think there's a lot to be learned from going from point A to point B. There's great opportunity from point A to point B. Sometimes we just pass by some of the greatest moments of our life. And HearHere is kind of positioned to maybe pick up that slack.
Do you have any words of wisdom for listeners who are about to embark on an epic California road trip?
I don't know. What I want to say is good for you. You're going. What I want to say to them is, along your way, there's an app that might even make that trip more enjoyable. It's called HearHere.
I love that. In fact, let's listen to another HearHere story as we go to break.
Today, San Francisco continues to be a focal point for both resistance and innovation. The region and its many people have cycled through boom and bust, rise and fall, death and rebirth. This is the area you're driving through. Welcome to San Francisco.
After the break, we'll have more of my conversation with Kevin Costner when he kicks off our new occasional segment, the California Questionnaire. This is California Now. I live near Sacramento, and due north of me is Upstate California. It's an amazing place known for an abundance of protected land set aside for everyone, some 30,000 square miles of forested territory. I don't have to tell the backpackers listening what a dream that is. Or if you're like me, you enjoy soaking up the local history and nature before ending the day with a hearty meal and a little stargazing. And yeah, Upstate California offers that too. Among the spectacular national and state parks are the ruggedly beautiful Modoc National Forest, as well as Lassen Volcanic National Park, which is the type of place where you can experience snowbanks, wildflowers, kayaking, and lava pinnacles, maybe all in the same day. It's an easy place to go and find some space, and well worth the visit. For more information, check out upstateca.com. That's upstateca.com. So, Kevin, before we let you go, I want to introduce an occasional segment on our show called the California Questionnaire. This should be very fun and easy, and it starts with the question, where do you live?
On the coast of Santa Barbara.
Why there?
Well, I'll tell you, I've gotten lucky in my life. Like I said, my parents didn't have a lot. I wasn't sure I was ever going to have. It turns out I've had more than I could ever dream of. And this is a place that spoke out loud to me to be on the water with my children and my wife. And so we moved here. I knew about Santa Barbara when I was a kid. I used to actually hate Santa Barbara because I lived in a town next to it called Ventura. And so we played them in sports. So I naturally grew up hating Santa Barbara. But one day I kind of got past that and thought, well, what a great place to live, Santa Barbara.
That's funny. Your high school rivalry.
That's right. So you let that screw up your business sense.
Okay. Who or what is your greatest California love? I mean, it could be a beach or a concert venue, a sports team, even like a time of day or a feeling. Who or what is your greatest California love?
The High Sierras.
And why is that?
Well, there's that. It makes me think of my mother and father, and maybe I was going there in diapers and learned to walk there. So there's something about the Sierras that that will never leave me.
What's the biggest misperception about Californians?
That they can't drive in the rain. Of course we can.
Right.
When people back east go, well, the people in California can't drive in the rain. I'm thinking to myself, what does that mean? You're supposed to speed up in the rain?
Okay, what's the stereotype that holds most true?
It's really expensive to live here.
What's your favorite Golden State splurge?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm pretty thankful for In-N-Out. When I've been gone a long time,
Mm-hmm.
when I just got to get filled up, thank God that thing is on the side of the road.
I hear you. No, I'm a double protein style guy myself.
The
What do you order when you go there?
animal.
Animal style, yep.
Yeah.
And if you could decree an official state culinary experience, what would it be?
Well, I'd say I probably there's a lot of places and there's a lot of kind of food, but probably if I think I get a lot of satisfaction out of eating at the San Ysidro Ranch.
Can you describe that for people who've never heard of it?
Well, it's just a bit of a boutique hotel with a great bar and a great restaurant, and the food is just I just love it.
How do you define California style?
It's a myth to describe it, but if you've got a convertible, you can throw anything in the back and you can go anywhere you want.
That's great. Okay, what's the best California song and why? And the more than one song is fine, but what would you say is the best California song?
I'd say Scott McKenzie's San Francisco. It defined an era that I grew up in the Vietnam War. A lot of times people think that people who wore tie dye and had blue sunglasses that's kind of a cliche. Well, I want to tell you, it's not. I remember I was involved in busing, and I could come through Santa Barbara, and during '67 and '68, there were street lights. The freeway didn't go all the way through Santa Barbara. You still was 2 or 3 street lights. And there would be no fewer than 40, 50 kids at each light, all hitchhiking to San Francisco. And my brother was in Vietnam at the time. And so that song was real. It's not some kind of fairy tale. Kids were going, kids had flowers in their hair. It was an interesting moment in time. And so while there's a lot of good California songs, you ask what my one is, I guess San Francisco for me.
Yeah, it's a great song. Okay, we have one more. How would your California dream day unfold? And, you can kind of, take us through the day, how it starts, what you do, where you go to eat.
I'm kind of living my dream. I've like I said, I never knew that I would have some of the things I have. I live on the ocean. I wake up to it. If you want to break it down for me, I like a really good waffle in the morning, and then I love seeing my kids head out on their surfboards right off our house, and I think to myself, I don't know what I've done right in life, but I did this part right, and because they have that life in front of them, and when they were little, they spent all their time in the tide pools. It was always different. And now they bring their friends over, and I can just sit out in the point, and I can watch my children succeed.
Well, Kevin Costner, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us on California Now.
I appreciate it, and wish you well, and everybody out there, thanks for going to the movies all these years.
Kevin Costner is an Oscar-winning movie legend who lives in Santa Barbara. For more on the app he co-founded and helps narrate, check out HearHere.com. That's HearHere.com. As always, we'll have links to all the places we talked about on today's episode and lots more on our website, visitcalifornia.com/podcast. This is California Now. Thank you for listening to California Now. We hope you enjoyed this episode and get a chance to hit the road soon. This podcast is produced by Visit California. I'm your host, Satirius Johnson. You can find our show on iTunes and Stitcher. Please subscribe. And please check our website for the latest in the way of state travel advisories. It's visitcalifornia.com.